everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here on this Tuesday, on a day where actually it was a bit of a disappointment in terms of the what we got with respect to rain across much of the northern mid-Atlantic and into the southern areas of the Northeast, although it is raining with some volume in southern New England at the moment. But for other areas, it really turned out to be a big disappointment. There were a few striped, narrow bands of maybe 1 inch plus rains, and everybody else really didn't get very much. It seems that the support for the system, as the front moved to the East Coast and got far enough away from the upper low, which is way to the west, it just didn't have it. The marine layer also got involved in some areas too, and that resulted in the Storm Prediction Center this morning knocking down their risk of severe weather. There were some stronger thunderstorms in a few places. We did get some very strong gusty winds, but from the standpoint of rain, especially from New York City westward, it was not very much. It's a little higher as you go east over Long Island, as they're getting some downpours coming in from off the ocean, and also into Connecticut and Massachusetts, where they also desperately need some rain after the dry period of the last couple of weeks, last more than a couple of weeks, the last 4 or 5 weeks, getting into that. So we're going to talk about that. I'll show you the satellites. We'll take you across the country and the upper air pattern going into the weekend. We talked yesterday about possibility of something tropical developing in the Northwest Caribbean. I think that still remains the case, but I don't think that that development really is important. It will not have time to become anything other than a depression, or maybe a little bit stronger than that, if it even gets to that. The deep trough that's going to be in the eastern part of the United States over the weekend is going to pull all that moisture northward. So that'll set us up for the opportunity of another round of rain, and maybe that one will work out. But I got to tell you, I'm pretty skeptical going forward with all of this in lieu of what happened today and what's happened on and off in the last 6 months, where a lot of times models have just way overdone the amount of precip that we wind up getting. So we'll take a look at everything. You have to recognize that the model is showing a lot of energy, and the potential is there for a pretty solid rain event for Sunday night into early Monday from the mid-Atlantic on northward. But again, you have to have a little bit of skepticism here. So just hang on 1 second. We'll start the weather video, and then we'll come back later and address your comments. Well, we mentioned yesterday that if we couldn't get a couple of inches of rain out of all of this, that it was going to be a big disappointment, and indeed that wound up being the case with regards to the weather front that's pushing into the eastern part of the United States. The support was tenuous, and in the end, the fact that most of the upper level support is back out to the west around the Great Lakes, so you can see there's rain going on through there. When we see it on the loop, on the satellite loop, you'll get a better view of this. But the thunderstorms really just never materialized. The Storm Prediction Center, with the slight risk of severe all the way down to Delaware, just never really happened. There were a few isolated cells that got a bit on the strong side, but other than a few stripes of heavy rain over parts of northern New Jersey and into the Hudson Valley, where some places got about an inch or so, most of the rain today was very low. Long Island getting some of it now with the frontal boundary close to the coast, so you're seeing surges of moisture running south to north. And you'll notice that this broad circulation here ahead of the upper air system, which is still pretty far to the west. So everything here along the coast is going to be pulled northward. Southern New England, much of New England may do okay with this rain-wise. Connecticut into Massachusetts getting into some solid rain here. And there are still some flash flood watches up for that particular area. But I want to start off with the eastern satellite view. Actually, I'm going to go back to that one in a second. I lost the eastern satellite view. There, no, that's not it either. Where's my eastern satellite view? Well, we'll use the U.S. view. If you take a look at the upper flow here with regards to what's happening, you've got this upper air trough right here along the east coast. The winds aloft are from the south. So the cold front that's with us can only get so far east, and we're going to have to wait for this upper trough to just kind of swing down and around and eventually lift out. But that may take another 36 hours to do. So I think the weather in the east is going to remain rather unsettled, especially for New England and for Long Island and maybe even for coastal New Jersey going into the day Wednesday. When you have the upper support that far away from where all the main energy is, eventually it just kind of loses out. And that's pretty much what happened here today with regards to this. You look out in the west, by the way, it's pretty calm, not much going on there with any kind of important weather. We've got some clouds streaming down from Canada down into the Rockies. Here's the view from the west coast, and energy is running up into southwestern Canada, but we've got this ridge that's building in the western part of the United States, so weather conditions there are pretty good. So let's go forward and see where we're all headed with all this. Here's the GFS upper air, and again, your cold front with this is already right out way ahead. Actually, I kind of drew it too far east. Let me just redraw that. But your cold front is right there along the coast. Your support aloft is still way to the west. There's your trough. So it really just kind of lost out on all that support today. But now we wait for this upper trough to swing around, which it's going to do, as we show you here. It dives down, swings through on Thursday. So I think, again, there's still going to be some unsettled issues Wednesday into Wednesday night. Now, once that lifts up, here's a second deep trough that drops down into the middle Mississippi Valley and then pivots around, moves towards the East Coast as we move into Sunday night and Monday. So once again, we're going to have a strong southerly flow aloft along the East Coast. Here's your trough. You've got northerly winds here on the back side. Here's your ridge in the west. So this is going to pull up moisture. And the question with regards to this is, if something does come out of the Northwest Caribbean in terms of a tropical depression or maybe even a weak tropical storm, I think there's a fairly good chance that the system will wind up getting absorbed by the extratropical developments that will be going on to the north. So this has a chance of bringing some solid moisture up the eastern seaboard, particularly if the support with this aloft is moving toward the coast and is not as far away as it was today. That, I think, is the big forecast question going forward. We'll show you on the surface map here. Let me just back it up so we can address both the first and here's that first system. And you can see the rain kind of lingers there right along the coast as another low develops. Meanwhile, those of you up in northern Minnesota got a low dropping into Minnesota, Wisconsin with some snow there, maybe even some snow into northwestern Wisconsin with that second low in front. Here we are Saturday afternoon. We've got this trailing front here running south. Here's what could be some kind of lows, whether it's I kind of think whether it's tropical or non-tropical really isn't that important, because I just don't see how this has any time to develop because of the deep trough in the east. This thing is going to get pulled up fairly quickly. That moisture gets involved with the front as it approaches the coast. This is Sunday morning on the GFS, and right there, here's your front. You know, there's some identity of a low here, another low that's up in northern Virginia. Gradually, it enhances the moisture, and you do actually get a fairly wrapped up little low there south of Long Island by early Monday morning. So it has potential to produce some decent rains here throughout much of the Northeast if this is correct. And in the meantime, we've got a little bit of rain and wet snow going on around parts of the lakes, some colder air aloft, so you get a little bit of lake effect, but not cold enough for anything problematic. There's another cold front up here with a big high that's going to be dropping down to the south, and that will actually start the ball rolling for maybe some snows next week in the central Rockies. So I'm going to, at this point, I want to go back one model run of the GFS and show you what's happening here. So here's that cold front that drops southward, and you have, low pressure in Utah with an east wind in the mountains. So the model is actually pretty bullish for an area of snow here up into Colorado, northwestern Kansas, westernmost Nebraska, southern Wyoming, and across most of Colorado back through Utah. This might not be a half bad little system. You've got generally cyclonic cooler air or cold air coming in across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, but it doesn't make a penetration too far to the south. Otherwise, the weather around the nation there is fairly quiet. And then as we move forward, another low is going to come out of Texas and then run up toward the Great Lakes as we move into days 10 and 11 on the model. Looks like the upper air pattern might be in flux again after about day 7 or 8 when we take a look at what that does. Let's put the upper air up for you here. And it appears, at least from the standpoint of the GFS anyway, that while we do have this trough in the east and the ridge in the west, as we go past days 8 and 9, there seems to be a bit of a breakdown in this, and at least in the GFS on the long range, as we go through days 12 through 16, you start to get that big ridge building in the eastern part of the United States again. Now, I would just caution that that may or may not be real, okay? When we look at the GFS out to day 10 and compare it to the European has a bit of a different look here. Here's the GFS. The GFS at day 10, I'm sorry, I got to go back one run to match it up right. Here's the GFS at day 10. Here's the European at day 10. So it's a bit different in its view. It looks like the European at least has a strong upper high over Alaska, kind of a split flow out from the Pacific, maintains a little bit of a vortex in Hudson Bay. So it's, the European, if you could extend it out past day 10, I just wonder whether you would get the kind of ridge in the east the way the GFS has it. By the way, we do have a couple of extra panels of the GFS now in for early next week. So why don't we just take a look, as it does have this vigorous cutoff low that it comes into the east. That's a fairly deep trough that it shows for Monday morning here in the eastern part of the United States. A very strong jet that dives down into the south, into the southeast, and yet another upper low behind it near Lake Winnipeg. So you want to be careful beyond the 7 to 10 day time frame in the long range. There's a lot of instability. I think there's a lot of room for error. So just because the model does show the ridge may be coming back in the longer period, long range, I don't necessarily buy it at this point. Now, check of the tropics, and we'll take a look at the tropical satellite. This is the area in question that the Hurricane Center rates as a 50% chance of developing into a tropical cyclone of some kind. But again, with that deep trough and strong upper level winds that will be turning to the south, southwest, and south, I think this thing just will not have time. You'll just have a low that comes out with the rain. Maybe it gets to a depression or perhaps even a weak tropical storm, but I just don't think that it has any kind of real impact other than the fact that that tropical moisture winds up eventually getting absorbed up into the eastern part of the United States. So we will, at this point, put a halt to this and take your questions and your comments, and just stand by, and I'll be right with you. Okay, I'm back, folks. Corey Bodziak, thank you so much. I really appreciate it for hitting Super Chat. Thank you. Good to see you here, and good to see you also on Facebook. I don't know how much rain you got today. As I said before, I was pretty disappointed with what we wound up with, at least so far. But We'll start to look ahead now to the next couple of days and the weekend, and that might wind up being a decent shot of rain and even some wind if a low gets going on that approaching cold front. You get that tropical moisture to get involved, and then again, longer range. We're going to have that troughing in the east through the first part of next week anyway. Whether it lasts beyond that or not remains to be seen. But just looking at the new GFS, which has a bit of a colder look to it, at least initially, but I don't have it out far enough. I only have it out to day 9. Now, with respect to my vacation, David Fuller, it was very good. But I've been back for a couple of weeks now because that was at the end of September. So we're almost at the end of October. It's amazing how quickly time goes. But I kind of wish it would lasted a little longer, or either that if I had another vacation to look forward to now. Zachary Gribos, what causes storms in North America to go west to east while tropical storms go east to west? The jet stream across North America runs west to east, but that jet only extends so far south, Zachary, and as you get closer to the equator, winds along in the high levels of the atmosphere become very, very light, and the tropical systems get pushed along by the trade winds or the easterlies. So when you look at most of the time in the tropics, when you go in the higher layers of the atmosphere, there's not really a whole lot of wind flow at all. And in fact, if there's an upper high built across the Atlantic and into the Gulf of Mexico, they're going to be on the south side of that. So those upper level winds are going to go east to west, whereas north of the high they go from west to east, and that's the reason. And in the wintertime, that jet stream dips way to the south. So you get weather systems moving west to east, even in the Caribbean, when you get into the month of November. Corey, less than half an inch in South Jersey. Yeah, the shore is getting some more. There's some thunderstorms out in the ocean, kind of clipping the Jersey Shore and also Long Island. So that might go on for a little while tonight. But again, very, very disappointed. Pandez, I don't have it set up. I don't think I can. Let me see. Maybe I can. Let me try. I'll give it a whirl, but I can't promise anything. Okay, so maybe I can. All right, so just be patient, everybody. I'm going to try this. All right, awesome. So we do have the 18Z GFS here. And there you see the front stalling along the east coast. There's another wave, and that's in response to the upper low that's diving down. So there's another wave of low pressure. So that's why you see the rain taking a long time to get out of the way of in New England. Meanwhile, there's that next low that drops down through the Great Lakes. We already had that much of the run. Now here's for Saturday night into Sunday. You can see the tropical moisture across Florida moving northward, and it gets involved with a developing low along the North Carolina coast on that front, and it actually strengthens it as it moves northeastward. So this might be a nice rain and wind event for the Mid-Atlantic and for the Northeast if this is correct. Now once that goes by, you can see there's a cold high that drops down. Some overrunning sets up in parts of the Ohio Valley. Now, you know what? I don't know if it's going to be cold enough, and even if that blue stripe is correct, we're talking, borderline temperatures anyway, so along the lines of a cheap thrill. That moves through the Northeast, and this is as far as we have at this point. Might as well show you the snowfall, the total snowfall for the next 10 days or so. And my, this GFS run actually gets pretty bullish. But you know what? You got to use these snow maps very, very cautiously. 99 times out of the 100, they're way overdone. I'm not sure what algorithms they use to figure this out, but this is what it comes up with regards to that overrunning precip. And I kind of have my doubts. So you can see the snows back through the Rockies with that system that drops down there. If we go back one run, which I'll do. This is the prior run, which I think makes maybe a bit more sense. Had a stronger system back through the Rockies on the earlier run. You can see with respect to the overrunning, it really didn't do very much moving up into the Ohio Valley. But you know what? This is where we're at now. As we go into the wintertime, we're going to be watching for these changes. Might as well also take a look at the rainfall with the potential for what might happen in the east. So why don't we take a look at that? This is, I'm going to put just the 24-hour precip to take out whatever we get for today. So let me roll it forward here for you. So this is for Sunday, and you know the models are actually pretty bullish with showing a couple of inches of rain out of all of this, out of the second system. If that tropical moisture gets involved, it may finish a little bit higher than that. So you know, a lot going on. We can look at the upper air. Let's see. So here's the upper air with Sunday. You see that deep trough in the east, and the upper low actually stretches down from the eastern lakes to the mid-Atlantic coast and then lifts up northward. And then gradually as we move through, this was the old run. You see how that, you know, ridge just basically starts to come back toward the end of the period. You get this upper high building into the east. Again, I don't know if I believe this. We'll come back to the new run, see how far out we have. And you see the new run wants to show more troughing in the east a bit longer. So it might be going a different route on this run than it did on the prior run. So you got a little bonus there. I was able to at least punch up the GFS there for you. Okay, what was the question? David Fuller asked me, what are your predictions for the winter? Okay, David, I'm going to say it again. I'm not doing any kind of winter forecast. I'm not into the long range. It's way over my head. It's hard for me to, I've tried it. It's an exercise in futility. I have no idea. And frankly, even the folks that do the forecasts know that deep down, they probably have maybe some idea, but certainly not with a lot of confidence going forward. So that's kind of you know, where I'm at with this. I'm not big on doing long range forecasts for seasons because I just don't see the point in it. I'd rather take the developments as they happen and figure that puzzle out because that is a lot more relevant to the day to day. Some people are into the long range and that's their thing, and I totally respect that, and that's totally fine. But it's just not what I do. So, Raymond, you probably had a little disappointment today with your severe weather up in upstate New York. I know there were some thunderstorms, but it wasn't overly crazy. And just want to make sure I got everybody here. Yes, we got to be cautious with regards to Sunday. Let's see if the models continue to show any kind of consistency with that going forward before we jump on the bandwagon of another big rain, because I could see how that could wind up disappointing. Again, as bone dry as it is, it would have been nice to get a nice solid 1 to 2 inch widespread rain for everybody with maybe some locally higher amounts, but it just didn't happen. All right, folks, I got to call it a night. I got to get ready for my show, so we'll leave it right here. Just don't forget, you can check out all the latest website posts, and I'll do a long-range post if I have a chance, maybe later tonight. And you can find that on meteorologistjoecioffi.com, and you can also find me on Facebook, on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, welcome. Seeing a few new subscribers every day, and that's a great thing. So if you haven't subscribed, by all means, please do. It's absolutely free. Thank you, Corey Bodziak, for hitting Super Chat tonight for a cup of coffee for me and maybe an oatmeal cookie besides. And we will see you guys tomorrow.